Hello, guys and dolls, cats and kittens. I hope you all are doing well out there, being safe, ready to say something if you see something. I hope the world has been treating you well and you're full of abundance and happiness. I know that's an unrealistic view, but at least at times, I hope you're experiencing that. And watching out for each other is what brings me around to this episode for tonight is human trafficking in Colorado. And I felt like I wanted to cover this before I went on with my updates because I think this has a lot to do with like 2 or 3 cases that we've covered. And it is extremely prevalent in Colorado, or is getting that way. It wasn't for a while, but apparently it is spiking right now, especially the child area of it. Human trafficking is a crime involving the severe exploitation of another person or for the compelled labor or commercial sex act using force, fraud, or coercion. So a lot of times people experiencing or are at risk of homelessness, people who struggle with substance abuse dependency, people who identify as LGBTQIA+, sex workers, minors who are not residing with their legal guardian, undocumented individuals, asylees, and refugees. Working on the issue of human trafficking means asking yourself and others to care about those who are often perceived as unworthy and rarely considered victims. Well, those are the cases that I always try to cover. I always try to speak for those who are forgotten or not spoken for. And apparently, there's a lot of us out there. I kind of feel like that sometimes myself because of the conditions that I've grown up under. And I think that's what spurs me to try to help somebody else. Because I don't think people should have to go through soul-wrenching consequences just for simply having been born into a rough situation or an unwanted situation. Working on the issue of human traffic means asking yourself and others to care. As I said at the beginning of this video, it wouldn't hurt you to pay a little more attention to what's going on around you. And if you make a mistake and everything's okay, no harm, no foul. But under the circumstances that these people are functioning under, it would behoove you to take a few lessons in how to spot this and maybe speak up. Or, if you feel that thing in your gut, just say something. Where does human trafficking occur? Human trafficking is a global issue, which means it occurs in your country, state, city, and your neighborhood. Trafficking has been identified in the following settings in Colorado: the hospitality sector, restaurants, hotels, etc., controlled labor, sexual trafficking, construction industry, which is unusual, but I guess they hold you hostage there and make you do all kinds of craziness. Commercial sex industry, sex work, escort services, exotic dancing, all can be a forced labor, sex traffic kind of situation. Trying to pay a debt, and they call it through debt bondage to a recruiter or a coyote. So if you agree to come over here and you don't have the money and these people tell you, hey, no problem, like credit card, you just come over here, work a few years for us, then you'll be set to go. You'll be free in the United States. The problem is once you get here, they have you under complete control and they'll charge your ass as long and as much as they want to, and do all kinds of other stuff to you while they're at it too. Through involuntary servitude in arranged or forced marriages. Oh my God, that is so scary. When I lived down in Aurora, there was a couple that had held a lady hostage for a number of years and forced her to do labor for them. And I don't even know what the husband had, was having him do or having her do for him. And you hear about this a lot, in the upper echelon. I guess people think they can just kite people off the street and make them work for them for no, money at all. And these people probably get treated pretty badly at the same time. There was a case here in Colorado where a couple checked into a really nice place. There was 4 people that had checked in. 2 people looked slovenly and malnourished, and come to find out, that couple had this couple in indentured, no, I can't even say indentured, just in servitude. So it can happen at anywhere at any time. Through commercial sexual exploitation of children, the worst kind, within other labor operations exploiting children, magazine crews, farm labor, etc. A long time ago, there was a famous shoe company that didn't like to pay for their employees, so they had a lot of child labor, and there were rumors they had even chained the children to the equipment so they could get as much time and production out of them as they could. And I don't get that, but that's how it went. Myths and misconceptions. The following are common myths and misconceptions about human trafficking. Trafficked persons can only be foreign nationals or are only immigrants from other countries. Bullshit. Reality. The federal definition of human trafficking includes both U.S. citizens and foreign nationals. Both are protected under the federal trafficking statutes and have been since TVPA of 2000. Human trafficking within the United States affect victims who are U.S. citizens, lawful permanent residents, visa holders, and undocumented workers. You know what I'm saying? Predators will feed on anybody. They don't give a crying crap who it is. And anybody who is broken, who has been through a horrible situation, these assholes seem to have this kind of beep, 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 to be able to focus in on you and then, lead you to this reality of where you feel good, only to get you under their control. Oh my God, sounds so much like my marriage, my last marriage. And that's why I'm never getting married again, because going through something like that is so horrific that you never want to take the chance of something like that ever happening again. Human trafficking is essentially a crime that must involve some form of travel, transportation, or movement across national borders. Human trafficking is another term for human smuggling, therefore the activity of movement. There must be elements of physical restraint, physical force, or physical bondage when identifying a human trafficking situation. Victims of human trafficking will immediately ask for help or assistance and will self-identify as a victim of a crime. A lot of these victims are too afraid to even make eye contact with you. That's one of the things that you look for. And they're so beat down and scared that they're often afraid to say anything. I don't know how often it is when they get a chance to say something, if they do, or if they just, are quiet out of fear until they can gather the strength and the bravery to try to move forward. Human trafficking victims always come from situations of poverty or rural villages. Not true. It's a broken person that they look for, and that can come from any background. Sex trafficking is the only form of human trafficking. That's not true. Labor trafficking is the same under that same human trafficking. That's why it covers both of them. There's a differentiation between labor and sex, but I think there's a lot for women or men. I don't know where they both meet up at there. Human trafficking only occurs in illegal underground industries. Well, that's probably a front, good business is probably front for that, especially with this construction stuff that they're talking about. If the trafficked person consented to be in their initial situation or was informed about what type of labor they would be doing or that commercial sex would be involved, then it cannot be human trafficking or against their will because they knew better. That is absolutely a load of bullshit. Foreign national trafficking victims are always undocumented immigrants or here in this country illegal. Another load of bullshit. Traffickers prey on those stuck in poverty. More specifically, they victimize children in poverty. 1 in 4 people enslaved today is a child, and 1 in 5 youth experience homelessness has been a victim of sex and labor trafficking or both. So that has been going on for a long time. And a lot of the LGBTQ and all the other letters that go with it, when they come forward and try to be real with their family members, often end up in this situation where they're booted or they're getting taken advantage of at home by some family member in a sexual orientated basis where they feel they'd rather live on the street than continue to live with the perpetrator. But now things are looking like, hey, let's call attention to this, which is absolutely infuriating that these homelessness or kids of the night, they used to be called, have been going through this, and there's really not much that has been done for that. This has been, that I remember, been going on since I was a child, and I'm older than dirt. So what does that have to say about it? All 50 states have reported child trafficking. Sex trafficking is the fastest growing Black product right now. 150,000 new escort ads are posted daily. Hidden among them are ads for children. 25% of the victims report the average number of buyers seen per day is 10. When sold online, 15 years old is the average age to enter into the sex trade, with 1 in 6 being under the age of 12. It is younger for boys. 44% of survivors report never being offered help while being trafficked. 1 in 6 children who are runaways will likely become a victim of sex trafficking. 15 years old is the average age, but they're going to take advantage of you anytime they can. Humans can be sold over and over again, and many times they are caught in an insidious web of deceit on the internet. Perpetrators know how to spot the signs of a person who is broken or needy. A lot of victims are groomed and treated well until they're not, and then they're expected to work long hours and to stay out until they get whatever the money is that they're told to stay out and make, or never being alone, and sent out around the United States to wherever the money is good. That's where these, conventions and big gatherings of people turn into a hotbed of money-making avenues for these illicit, illegal perpetrators. Also, it makes it very hard to get away since these people are holding them hostage and never letting them alone. The chains that hold them are mental, and the shame of having to perform for multiple people leaves them not knowing how to go back home again after having been used as someone's Kleenex for their desires. They no longer feel that they are a person that they used to be. It can take years to build up the courage to run and stay away. It is mental masturbation on its highest level, and they build you up to take you down and keep you down, making you feel as if they are the only ones that care for you, the new defective you. No one underage can be consenting in these situations and can be persecuted for it as well. It is called trafficking minors for a reason. Inducing a child under age of 18 to perform a commercial sex act with or without force, fraud, or coercion is human trafficking. No exceptions. Children can never be responsible or complicit for their abuse. God, thank God it's finally getting written down somewhere. Sex trafficking can have devastating consequences for children, including long-lasting physical and psychological trauma, sexually transmitted infection, substance use disorders, unplanned pregnancy, mental health problems such as depression and suicidal ideation. It is the biggest moneymaker for illegal activities right now, and they know all the tricks to ensnare someone. Not all the victims are found that way, as a crime is also a matter of opportunity. And if the opportunity presents itself, a person can and will turn up missing with little or no evidence as to what could have happened to someone's loved ones. And life as they know will never be the same again, either for the victim or the victim's family. Many victims are branded or tattooed so that they are labeled the same as property, signifying that they are such to anyone looking at them. And I remember reading a story about a lady who had to have a cross put on her hand, on the outside of her hand, so that anybody would know that she belonged to this stable and this guy. And it's such a demeaning way to treat you. In Colorado specifically, the state has no idea of what human trafficking is and where it takes place. I mean, it's coming about hard and fast on us now because Colorado is growing. Any like free space out there is, having a house thrown up on it. Hopefully this housing bubble and the fact that marijuana has been legalized in other countries, in other states in our country, will prevent this massive influx of people. I can't believe that people would actually move to a different state because marijuana has been legalized. I've smoked my whole life, had no intention of stopping whether it was legalized or not, but I always did work on the behalf of getting it legalized because I felt like it needed to be done. I knew there would be repercussions, but it was hard to fathom what they were. And I just feel like part of my delirium of wanting to be a legalized person has caused my beautiful state to be destroyed by destructive people who don't even pick up the trash behind them. As it's difficult to know because human traffic often goes unrecognized. There have been victims as young as 20 months, and their victims are pretty hard to be able to talk about what's going on to them. It's often unrecognizable or it's underreported because victims are afraid or that they don't understand what is happening. It's difficult to know because human trafficking often goes unrecognized. Colorado, with its international airport, sizable immigrant population, and convergence of major interstate highways, make it a source, destination, and a transit route for human trafficking. And for drugs too, and I guess money too, if you're looking at it. It's been the crack highway for a long time. Denver alone, the commercial industry brings in an estimated profit of $60 million each year. Despite Colorado's creation of anti-trafficking measures, there has been only one trafficking-related conviction since 2006. Now, why is that? Money. It has to always come down to money. Hotels have been sued or try to be sued by these victims, and so far the victims are not winning, the hotels are. And so even though these laws are in existence, nobody's really putting them to work. The fact is that for Colorado judges and court administrator, a basic overview of human trafficking numbers and demographics in Colorado and the U.S. and globally. At the same time, a variety of internationally recognized reports were consulted accurate and uniform statistics for human trafficking due to the industry's hidden nature. It's underreported because victims are afraid or don't understand what's happening to them. The top venues where sex trafficking takes place in Colorado is not going to be a lot of surprise to us who live here. Illicit massage spa businesses, pornography, residence-based commercial sex, online ad venues are unknown, hotel and motel based. These industries in which labor trafficking in Colorado takes place, peddling rings, door-to-door street sales of items like flowers, magazines, or candies, agriculture, for sure has to be out there picking some beans forever, construction, landscaping, domestic work. Some examples of human trafficking in Colorado, the campaign addresses include sex trafficking of a young woman by someone she loves and trusts, fuckers. Labor trafficking of a man and his family by another family member, labor trafficking of a young LGBTQ plus person by an employer, labor trafficking of a woman and her daughters who have moved here from a foreign country. A trafficker doesn't fit a single stereotype, and neither do their victims. Traffickers often prey on people who think they have vulnerability, perceiving them as easier to manipulate and exploit for their benefit. The Tennyson Center for the Children works with kids who have been abused and neglected. The president and chief executive officer, Ned Breslin, said that he and his staff have seen that many of the youngest victims are homeless. A recent report came out with the data that alarmed them. He said the number of children in welfare, the foster care system, are now popping up in trafficking data. In the welfare system, victims are disproportionately girls and children of color. Regardless of the socioeconomic status, and the vulnerability and trauma are big factors as well. That the labor to combat human trafficking based out of Colorado said some of the warning signs include a victim is forced to live where they work or is forced to live where the suspected trafficker. They're forced to live with the suspected trafficker. They don't have identification or documentation because somebody took it away from them. They aren't getting paid for their work. There's a lack of proper safety equipment and training. There is a reluctance to take someone to the hospital if they're hurt because nobody wants to get busted. They don't rather let that person die because they ain't looking at them like a person anyway. Warnings for sex trafficking. Watch for body language. And if somebody avoids making eye contact or is hesitant to speak, lack of knowledge or doesn't know where their documentation, ID, or paperwork is, spotting a van or RV that is out of place, branding or tattoos. Various hotels and motels across Denver, including a Doubletree Hotel, the Warwick Hotel, the Commons Hotel, the Red Lion Hotel, and Motel 6 have been connected to child trafficking. A member of the child trafficking ring told authorities that they had knowingly allowed their home in Denver's Montbello neighborhood to be used for child prostitution. I hope their gonads rot and fall off. A victim was forced to work out of Quality Inn in Centennial and Sleep Inn in Thornton, where her trafficker took her to have sex with strangers weekly from 2010 to 2011. When the ski resort season ramps up in Beaver Creek, Colorado, about 120 seasonal employees at the Ritz Carlton Bachelor Gulch gather inside for a series of upscale meeting rooms for an onboard training. The agenda covers hotel rules, expectations, and how to spot a slave. If a guest pays in cash or requests a room with an access to an exit, that is a red flag. The Ritz Carlton Hotel, located in a posh area of Beaver Creek, where roommates hit 480 to 700 a night, is not necessarily the place you think of human traffickers hanging out. But hotels and motels are prime locations for people to be trafficked, and the Ritz Carlton isn't immune. In a February 24 order, the U.S. District Court Chief Judge Philip A. Brimmer concluded that a woman identified only as JL had failed to prove that Best Western International, the Hyatt Corporation, Wyndham Hotels and Resorts, and Marriott International knew or should have known that their hotels were aware of her status as a trafficking victim. Plaintiff claims that her trafficking, torture, sexual exploitation occurred at the Best Western Plus, Hyatt Place, La Quinta Inn and Suites, Sheraton Hotels in the Denver Tech Center, and that as a direct proximate result of the defendant's refusal to prevent human trafficking at these properties, she was sexually exploited, repeatedly victimized, wrote Brimmer. Well, that's what I'm saying. The laws are there, but ain't nobody standing around trying to enforce them, because these big corporations have big lawyers that get paid big dollars, big. So everybody else is making out again, except for the victims. The perpetrators make out, the places where they stay are making out, even though there's a law saying if you get involved in this, hey, but you know what? Let's chase after people who leave the state to do stuff that the state don't want you to do. Airlines are also on the lookout for anti-trafficking. They have anti-trafficking billboards and at truck stops. The FBI is receiving training on interview techniques for trafficking cases. Lawmakers are taking notice. A Broomfield man was sentenced this month to 20 years in prison for sex trafficking homeless minors. According to the FBI's Denver office, Steve Allen Conti used his construction business as a front for the exploitation of youth using drugs and violence to control his underage victims. He would use drugs to manipulate. He would force us into awful things, one of the victims said in a statement read by a court-appointed advocate. I remember one time when he couldn't just control me. He dragged me to a field and he held a gun to my head, so it became easier to just do what he said. Of course, he wants to be treated like that. The pandemic has also made trafficking these cases even harder, because now everything's being done online, and it's harder to track these people. Traffickers have shifted from physical locations to online locations. It's gotten so bad that even Boulder County District Attorney's Office human trafficking investigator Edna Muniz was recently hired to devote her time to investigating human trafficking cases and to act as a resource on such cases to other law enforcement agencies. Officials decided her position was needed after seeing how much impact specialized units Hey, you should watch True's Clues podcast on Mondays on YouTube. It's the best for following true crime.